Good evening, Graham.
Duncan, how are you?
Steady.
Steady. That's
Yeah,
that's that's good to hear. Steady's a nice thing to be.
yeah. I might be having an issue with the light this time of the day
Hmm.
coming in. The blinds are on three quarters, and occasionally when it moves, it comes through. So I
Yeah.
hope, I hope our viewers are not too off put by the sudden dazzling sunshine of Sheffield.
No. 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 Well, yeah. Well, I'll keep an eye out for that. Maybe we'll edit the color later.
How are you?
Give you some spectral halo effects. I'm fine. Yeah, very well. I'm in my cabin. I'm always happy in this cabin. In fact, if I'm not in a good mood, I won't come in here. It's become an emotional space as much as a physical one. Jesus Christ.
But does that mean then you don't go there? I would have thought it'd be the opposite. If you're not in a very good mood, oh, I need to go to the cabin, then you get in a good mood because you're surrounded by all the
Yeah,
essentials you need, Graham.
yeah. Well, I've learned a lesson actually from my previous study, which is that you the place you inhabit to do what you think is most important um, can easily soak up all sorts of different things, and you never know quite what's going to happen. The room will start to have a life of its own. And my conclusion from that is if you're in a bad mood, go for a walk. If you're in a good mood, go to the cabin. So that's how it's playing out.
I like the slightly transcontinental word cabin. It's good
Mm, I like the word cabin as well. Yeah, it is a good
rather
word.
than the shed.
Yeah, I won't call it the shed.
No, it's not a
It's
shed; it's a cabin.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Um, it's followed like all the time in Russia. It's very common you would have because generally urban cities where I've been to then go out of the city. City dwellers have a second dacha, which is
yeah.
where they grow their vegetables. And to retreat, often they have banyas there, and it's a really. But it's the same in Scandinavia and in Norway. A lot of friends have got inherit family cabins up in the forest or in the mountains. It's a really lovely
Mm,
thing.
yeah.
Um,
Well, you'd know all about that.
eh?
Do you not have your own version of that yourself?
In a kind of way, yeah. The van,
Yeah.
seaside. Um, good point. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but yeah,
Mm,
we shall be going there in a week or so. So
splendid.
yeah,
Yeah.
have an anniversary of being alive coming up. So
Do you? Your
yeah,
birthday?
ah,
You know, it's not when is that? Oh, don't say it because the YouTubes will process your data and invade your ID.
there you go.
I need to concoct a nice thing for you. I'll bear that in mind.
Indeed, you were always very imaginative with your gifts in that sense. Yeah.
That's nice to hear. I do my best.
So, if you're in a bad mood and you really want to do some writing, do you not go and get on with some writing then? Because you won't be in
Um,
a cabin.
no, I won't do it because I mean, partly, I mean, this could get a little bit kind of let's get introspective and talk about our own navels, but um, there's it's different kinds of bad mood, I think. And the one I'm thinking of is the one that won't possibly write. But there is another mood which might be more laced with a certain kind of anger, I suppose, mainly anger actually,
Mm,
where it is good to write. And I think anger is actually quite. I
agree.
mean, your old butter eating overweight ex Sex Pistol used the phrase in one of his early Pill songs, "Anger is an energy," and
Mm,
I think that's kind of quite. There's a lot of truth in that. So
mm,
yeah, if I'm annoyed or angry about something, in fact, when I think back to my academic life, actually, quite a lot of my writing started with a sense of anger because everything in the last, well, choose your decade number, but everything in the last 20 odd years, 30
Mm.
years maybe, has been generally quite shit, and it's easy to get angry about it.
It's a good
So
one.
yeah, good
It's
motivation.
I agree. It's complicated though because I think the classic bit for me, trying to making painting was, it's not just a bucket to be sick in, and anger is, yeah, incredibly motivating. We know our chemical bodies, you know, uh, get pumped full of all these adrenalines and when we get angry. And it's not necessarily articulate, is it? It's understanding how you can use whatever it is that motivates anger. But to try and articulate that is really, that's it's complicated.
Mm,
I think the kind of really naff cliche about, oh, you just got to express yourself in a piece of writing or trying to make a painting or something. Yeah, it's the recipe for bloody disaster, isn't it? It's
yeah,
like remember there was an interview with Marky Smith saying that Nick Cave had sent him some lyrics, and he just said they were shit because they're just booze lyrics. Somebody has 4 pints and half a bottle of wine and thinks they've solved everything, and it just comes out inarticulate. And I think, uh, yeah, I'm aware of it. In the same way that there is no flip side where you've got to be totally calm and passive and sort of rational, doesn't produce something in the same way either,
yeah.
which kind of we sort of circled in and around bits of that last week when we were talking about, but I guess one of the things that I've got written down, and I did watch the episodes. I watch them every time we've done it and they get published. I was a bit kind of shocked by some of the things. I thought it was quite good, some of it.
Yeah.
um, was something about motivation then, and prior to what the last, well, since you've left academia, without question, we've talked about issues in academia, but one thing it did do was create a tension about writing for you. I'm imagining, you weren't you had to sort of, I don't want to use this word, you had to perform, didn't you? You had to produce writing. And you make sense of that. And I think you did remarkably well at making sense of how you wanted to steer through, which is, this worst, really vain kind of field. So now you're not in academia. It got me thinking about, well, no one's telling you to write a word. So what's
Yeah.
motivating you? I mean, is that something that, because I've
I'm
got a
just
version
waiting
of
for
it
you to come
myself.
back.
Looks like we might have in unstable internet connection. Let's hope it. AI tends to fill in these gaps. We've noticed. You're back in the room, I guess, Graham.
Yeah, I missed all of that. Sorry. You
Uh,
just
it
weird.
was beautiful speech. Really,
Yeah.
really complimentary, flattering about you.
I
Oh, it was wonderful.
can only imagine.
Where did we end?
No one's telling me
It's
what
to do with
to
this idea.
write.
Yeah. And I don't want it simplistically to go in, oh, well, I'm motivated by this or this or this. But because you brought it up in a way, this idea, I don't go to the cabin if I'm in a bad mood. So the motivations to write something, unless it's just a purely self-reflexive activity, which is probably like a hobby then. Are you writing for something? It could even be the notion a person is going to read what you've written, because that to me stops it just being a hobby. It means you're trying to create some sort of dialogical thing, conversation, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
So because I watched the episode back, there's more than one type of writing you're doing as well. So I'm interested for somebody, who might assume, okay, when you're in academia, you're obliged to write. In your field, absolutely. In my field, I'm obliged to make art. But when you're not in that, I think it is quite, for some people, quite odd. Like people have said to me, "Oh, what are you doing now?" And you kind of go, "Well, what do you think?" I'm in the studio making art. Oh, so
Yeah.
over to you. Over to you.
Well, I mean I mean I did talk about it last week, but I one of the things I wanted to, so I'll swerve the question a little bit and or at least move it on to something that's not just about me, because I think one of the things about writing that is really its core energy is its internality, right? The fact that every composition of writing is has to have within it a sort of some form of structure and some kind of aesthetic, and ultimately, whether it be a scientific paper, even some kind of story to it, in order for it to be legible. And I know that in the last week we talked a little bit about, well, quite a lot about our own approaches to writing and some of the things that matter to us intimately about the way in which writing takes place. Your discovery of writing at a quite late stage, because it kind of allowed you to do communicate certain ideas that
Hmm.
needed to accompany art and all of these things. But the writing itself is an artifact. It has, in its composition, it has its own kind of textures, right? And I was wondering about that. So, I mean, to kind of go back to your question quickly, I suppose I'm if I'm writing about, if I'm drafting bits of writing about a kind of semi-academic book, and I'm trying to think of some blogs that I might write, which I haven't yet, and then I'm writing a lot of fiction. Um, in each case, at the moment, because certainly doesn't feel like a hobby. At the moment, the thing that seems to be most interesting to me is um, the ways in which you can compose writing really well. So when I'm writing, I'm increasingly aware of quite things I never really thought about. The ways in which you compose writing can involve really fine decisions over the use of words, the whether you complete a sentence with two clauses in it or one clause, the kinds of language you use, the ways in which you deploy all of the devices we use in writing, analogies and metaphors and symbolisms and all these other more kind of technical things that people talk about. I'm really fascinated by that, and I read my writing back way more now than I used to. I used to write, and it was a little bit like a cathartic thing. You would write and kind of go, that's 1,500 words. I'll do some more after lunch. It's nearly done. Oh God, I don't want to look at that again. And then you force yourself to look at it, and so on. Really curious way of doing anything. But now I'm reading my own writing, not because I want to smoke a pipe and appreciate it, but because I'm thinking there's loads of decisions I've made here, and it reads in a quite specific way. So that's one thing, that kind of the internal texture. And relatedly, then, because I'm doing a huge amount of reading, more reading than writing on a daily basis, I'm in an abstract conversation with other writers. So I'm reading a load more fiction than I used to, and if I do read academic stuff, it tends to be, let me not be rude about academic work too much. It tends to be the more readable academic work, not the work that one gets in academic journals, which is often, well, I don't think it's even a stretch. It's designed to be read by people who are professionally compelled to read it. It's not designed to be read by anyone who's in. If you're interested in why inflation rates matter in a developed capitalist economy. Don't go to the Journal of Political Economy and read an article called "Why Inflation Matters," to an economy. Never do that, because you're just going to be bored shitless within 3 pages. So I'm trying to read non-fiction, broadly academic work that comes from authors who give a shit about writing, rather than referencing structure, referees' comments, blah blah blah. So I'm thinking about other authors and the way they've done things loads more than I used to, and it's really engrossing to do that. I mean, for example, when you were talking about flow, it's not a good word, and people use the word flow when they want to behave a little bit like children and produce things and say, "This is me." But then I think about William Faulkner, and I read As I Lay Dying recently, and I read Sound and the Fury a long time ago. Or bits of Samuel Beckett I've read recently, not the big fat books, but smaller pieces. And they both read as flow. And they, if you read them and then you reread parts of them, you kind of find ways of understanding that there's a real discipline in this, and you can't do that unless you pay good attention to the text. But I would also say you appreciate it most of all when you try writing yourself, right? If you try and write something which has a spontaneity to it, or involves having to produce a character's internal dialogue, because none of us think in sentences. It's really very difficult, and it produces wonder in you, actually, because it is something that is really, it's like making gold out of base metals. It's very difficult to get right, very difficult indeed. But that's the wonder of it, really.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think I've always liked. There's a kind of discipline. Listening to you talking about, there's a craft and there's a discipline to that, which, again, trying to make paintings. The idea you can just turn up and throw paint around and hope you express something. It's deeply rooted in discipline for me, and it's this thing. It's part repetition, part kind of ritualistic things that you have to do all the time, and there's a real craft in that, and that's what I recognise in art that art that I've liked. In the same with music and film, you can just know when somebody's got this craft, and you just got to work at that. It's not something you're given, or if you find these odd moments where something really does connect, it's not, oh well, now I can just forever ad infinitum just repeat that, because it doesn't mean anything. I've always really responded to craft, and the fact that there's a kind of discipline to reading, and just saying I'm going to take a morning just to read almost sounds archaic on one level, and I think it's a beautiful thing, and one of the things which I've got in front of me here is this endless notion of renewal, that if you move out of certain types of, I'm talking about art here, and probably in your field, writing, which probably there's a type of writing that you can just keep endlessly developing the same thing over and over and over. But I was thinking more about how do you manage to reinvent and reinvent requires real discipline and craft. I think it's a massive thing for me.
Yeah.
And I think when you said storytelling, my interest absolutely is in storytelling, but not in, there was a start, a middle, and an end. I think that's just a lazy cultural assumption that's probably television has installed in us more than anything else, and the endless Netflix series, which start, middle, and end, and you can consume it all in one go. But
I wish.
real storytelling has the opposite. It just leaves you somewhere, and it takes you somewhere, and it moves you somewhere. And often the people you mentioned, somebody like Beckett, God damn it, I have no idea where you are. He puts you somewhere, and I think there's something in that which, my argument recently has been, the world isn't there just to be consumed by a reproduction of itself. So you buy a new pen, and you've got to make it into an image to share it with somebody. Oh, look at my new pen. Yeah, great. But how we're kind of consuming things into these small moments, and we know that algorithms increasingly are squashing these moments together because they will reject things either side, has really shifted this notion of storytelling, I think. And I
Yeah,
want, and it's storytelling for me is a way of recalling something that you don't know, because you don't know it till a great story puts you somewhere. Recall's probably not the right word, but it's like it reimagines something you couldn't imagine, but you kind of have this notion of, because
that's a
it
good.
yeah, it's
I mean,
outside
that's
of,
a really
yeah.
important point. I think that which I was thinking of one of the things that we talk about quite a lot implicitly is the difference between art well, we talked about music and art's there all the time, and writing's there all the time, and they're all part of the same thing, but they also have, if you like, their own weapons. And I was thinking about what one might say kind of quite forcefully about writing, and I think writing, because it does. Um, I don't know why, actually. I thought maybe I did, but I'm not sure that I do. But writing, it seems to me, has the best way of producing fantasy, um, whether it be some sort of, reasonably well researched fantasy past, or obviously the huge modern American genre of science fiction, or the ghost story,
Hmm.
which is arguably the written ghost story is the most chilling way of talking about ghosts. Um, and I don't think you can. I'm going to use some really crude comparisons here. You can hear some scary music, and it's not really very scary. And you can see some art that depicts the supernatural, or for that matter, the horrific. And it's very striking, but it doesn't. I don't know if it kind of quite throws your synapses into a sense of trepidation or dread in the same way as a written word, and it has this way of making really specific uh, implications. It can make you do your own work, by leaving things out, but it can do it in a way that's quite meticulous. So if we're going to imagine a future world, it seems to me that fiction is kind of kind of the only way in which you can do that in a way that really engages
Yeah,
people.
yeah, something. Do you not do you not think cinema?
Well, cinema's so literal, isn't it? I mean, particularly now.
No, no,
There may have
no.
been a day when there may have been a time when there was a kind of ambition to show fantastic and obscure futures, but I think cinema now is it's kind of giving, and the futures they depict are awful and stupid. But the fantastic images of cinema are way too detailed to. I'll speak personally then and see what you think. You have a different view. Way too detailed and way too um, scripted, um, to do anything more than sort of hold you watching them until they finished. I think.
I think I've got a very different take. And I suppose again, like all these subjects, it's like saying sport or food, and we say cinema. There are so many different aspects and schisms within cinematic traditions and history. But for me, good cinema it doesn't is outside of everything. I'm deeply jealous of really good cinematography and cinema as a
Mm.
narrative device, visually, textually, audibly, and then the word. Maybe it's in there, maybe it's not. Doesn't have to be. I think probably if we were to kind of, you know, going down on a sinking ship, refusing to sink, I'd probably take a couple of films with me
Right.
just to
Yeah.
remind me of, you know, the extraordinary imaginative possibilities of stuff. Um, but something I just want to flip back a little bit to one of the shifts I understood in writing, and this is I'm kind of hearing it partly from what you were saying, but it is a kind of polyphonic voice. So it's the idea of the polyphonic, which is stolen from, I think, music theory, isn't it? Where you have multiple voices at the same time, or instruments, or sounds. But in literature, that's the one thing I've always really responded to is having, you know, you're never quite sure sometimes which voices are speaking. And the things I'm reading at the moment, absolutely. And I guess because I don't have so much hierarchical interest in a way, sometimes lyrics do that for me as well. Just word combinations that are combined with sounds are very, give me kind of thought thinking things. Um, and that's sometimes it's very visual, but not always. Sometimes it's just, I couldn't think that through these combinations. And I suppose there's a sort of poetic type of poetic language there, which through relationship association, the word has the ability to transcend itself into something else. And I find myself reading, yeah, it's this Alice Notley book over and over and over and over and over again, and I kind of never done that before. And I'm kind of thinking, God, was I blind? Didn't I read that last time? And it's the way that the words constantly keep reforming themselves. And that's to do with a rhythm, a pace. It's to do with me, really, how I catch things and find myself reading the same grouping of words and having kind of different sort of responses to them. And that I really had to listen to, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something about me and, you know, a kind of laziness of thinking, oh, I should be able to put this together, whatever that means. And as soon as it's kind of got a bit, no, I'm not sure, I'll have to read it again. And then I read it again and then again. And they're structured in such a beautiful way. Yeah, that really got me thinking about this polyphonic. So it's multiple speaking.
Mm.
Because that's the only way I can write, I think. And when I asked you about who you're writing for, is it necessary to have a voice that you're kind of addressing? I think it's because I've always written in a dialogical way. So I often have two voices speaking at the same time, some fictional interview or fictional conversation. And that allowed me then not just to kind of have to write, I can write phonetically, if you like, because it sounds like spoken speaking rather than proper sentences. So from last week, we were talking about it. I think that's what it kind of can only work if I'm speaking to something, and that's not myself because that's boring. Um, and maybe I'm sometimes talking at a place or at an object or at a moment I'm trying to reconfigure. I'm really aware of that. So again, it's not just for me. It would be just pushing words up into the air and hoping they all land in some way that makes sense. So it was kind of again thinking back to this idea of, is it important for you that you have somebody you're kind of writing for?
Mm. Yeah, well. I would, in light of what you've just said, I would say, and it is a cliche, I'm writing for myself.
Yeah.
But I would suggest you're writing for yourself as well. And it's interesting to hear you say that you write dialogically, because I don't want to listen to myself. But that's exactly what you're doing.
I
You're
know.
both people, right? So that seems to me exactly what writing is.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a kind of fission of the senses. You're kind of writing as if you're not writing. You're having to play a writer whilst also being yourself,
Hmm.
or you're having to read stuff that you don't immediately think of as you having written. The characters,
That's
um,
kind of like, I'm sorry, that's kind of like the trick. It's not a trick. That's the game you have to play. Because the
yeah,
minute it becomes self-conscious, that's what for me when it's just like, oh, come on, do something else. Because
yeah,
I know what I'm looking at all the time.
yeah,
The bit where I don't know what I'm looking at, it's because you've somehow created a combination of words that somehow it's a new relationship. So I can't do that from nothing. So I normally have something at the back of my mind that, well, I'm looking at things on the wall that I was scribbling some notes down. And it's often really fun, playful, stupid things as well. Because again, if I try and write something that I really care about and I'm fucking angry and it's serious, it just doesn't work. It's back
yeah,
it's back where we started. So
yeah,
it's kind of like trying to sneak up on things the other way around.
yeah, yeah,
And it's kind of anecdotally funny or something, and then you're in because I've kind of tricked myself into something, and I think
yeah.
that's a really great craft to writing. I think you can be laughing at something and realize there's a kind of real human pathos and tragedy in it. Without, oh my god, I can't deal with this. It's too much. And I guess we drift then into horrible populist sort of writing and type of journalism that has no interest in anything other than look at me, look at me. I'm going to tell you things that are just, going to make you feel really bad about yourself and the world. It's just not interesting, in that
No,
way.
I don't know if yeah, I mean there have been and there still are a few, but most journalists now, the writing of most of the broadsheets, in the more opinion editorial fashion, the writing is abysmal. I mean, barely
Mhm.
even. Yeah, I mean they I don't read them anymore. They're so bad.
When you say abysmal, is that what content or structure or
Everything. Thing. I mean,
okay?
they very rarely. Seriously, I really think it is the whole. It's the full spectrum mediocrity of mainstream print media. And it it is, um, like a lot of grand old institutions that people lament their demise, hidden away amongst the kind of the structural reasons about austerity or the rise of social media or Boris Johnson or Brexit or whatever people say is the reason for their woes, whatever it is. There's often, particularly in the middle classes, a hidden suicide note that you've actually fucked up yourself. I
Hmm.
know that's the case from the university, and I think also journalists must have at some point, at a collective level, at an editorial or managerial level, decided to write really badly, or not to set agendas, or
Hmm.
to produce writing that is supposed to produce um, an emotional affect which is unlovely, rather than edifying or interesting. And so you get unreadable you get unreadable text. And so, when everyone's complaining about the fact that online news is so powerful now, or that hot takes on social media are fake news and so on, I kind of think, well, yeah, but what's your role in all of this? Because the nature of journalism has changed, and you are journalism, so have a think about that. And the same for a lot of other institutions. Well, certainly academic
I think
institutions.
maybe, yeah. I do read a lot of sport journalism, and good sport writing is something I really like. There's the kind of type of journalist I've try and follow, although I won't sign up to various blog forum things now, so it's hard to get some of it. But I think sport journalism has a kind of social, cultural dimension, which I think reflects when it's good, it's really good. I think because it's not talking directly at something because it's sport, but then through sport you get into this other world of real stuff, which perhaps you can't on like political editorial journalists. Just you're dealing. It's just kind of like perfunctory a lot of the time. Um,
Yeah,
so one thing, because you mentioned it before, but I was going to ask you, what are you reading at the moment? That was one of my questions, Graham. And you're probably reading bloody loads of stuff, aren't you?
I do read a lot of things at the same time. Yeah. I've just finished reading Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell,
Okay.
which is an exceptional book. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, because it's a book that says now a major film, which kind of
Yes,
always
of
puts me
course.
off.
Yeah, yeah.
I read The Art of the Novel by David Lodge, which is a book about writing novels, which was superb. I'm reading Dominion by Tom Holland, who has done a kind of big picture history of Christianity and its cultural presence in a secular West.
Wow.
Although he does
Okay.
start in about 400 BCE. I'm reading the Iron. Well, it's over here somewhere. The Iron Republic, which is I think that's the name of it, which is a history of Prussia, and which feeds into debates about the role Russia specifically played in the First and Second World War. And I'm reading A Handful of Dust by Evelyn Waugh, which is one of these. I
Nice.
quite enjoy them for light reading. One of these kind of really strange, quaint, brutal Etonian public school satires that seem to be produced in the first half of the 20th century, particularly. But the craft of the writing is always so remarkable. The ways in which, particularly with Waugh, the use of dialogue, very extensive use of dialogue, and the implications you can get out of people talking to each other about the nature of their relations to each other. So yeah, those are all things bouncing around at the moment.
Yeah, that's gosh, because in first it'll be I think the first or the 2nd of September I will be running a module in Bergen for the first year MA on writing. Uh, yeah,
What are you
which
planning?
a lot, Graham, because it's I mean a lot we touched on last week. It's like, well, educationally, what you're learning, how you're learning to write, and is the skills. Of course, like any language, it's going to keep changing and evolving. But as an artist, what do you need to understand? Do you need to do to write? In a way that in my lifetime, there's been a massive shift from I never wrote to the worst case scenario where the words I write come in front of the artwork now. And that's a kind of cultural thing with galleries and museums. So it's going to be a very open-ended kind of look at, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to write? Because these are the conventions. These are the things you might want if you want to apply for money, residencies, exhibitions. You want to get on to do whatever it is in the future. You probably need some sort of understanding of the requirements of that. You probably need an artist's statement. You probably need some sort of mini manifesto about what do you want to do, how do you want to do it, why are you doing it in relation to what. Some are using text as art, so it's like a notion of the word is the art. To then, my sense increasingly, certainly in the post-COVID, my teaching, a lot of students just they don't want to write, and they're really pissed off that they feel obliged to write about the work, for assessments, evaluations, get exhibitions, because it's a distinctly different language to the language they're trying to use in their art practice, and they're not the same thing, and they don't fit together. So I was going to open it up to them. There's lots of fun exercises we could do, but certainly talking through these things, because I wonder, if you mentioned Evelyn Waugh would have gone through a really particular educational learning process about how to write and how to craft, is how relevant or not relevant. I mean, it's relevant to you, fine, because but I wonder what it'll be in the future that we need.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Given that AI will do most of it for you if you want, I wonder how many jobs now require you to actually write something. Emails are kind of shorthand thing, but even that's getting auto-generated now if you want, by programs, just very quickly. You can just click X, Y, and it will generate the email. Very good, fine, it's done. So I wonder where we're going with that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the short answer for me, at least, is probably downhill. I mean, writing. It's not a conservative rant to say that writing has kind of fallen out of popular culture pretty much across the board.
Do you think that, honestly, more books have been sold than in the entire history of...
Yeah, that's true. And the people have foretold the death of the novel many times and been
Yeah, of
wrong.
course. Death of art, death of painting, it's all...
Yeah, so the death of is always a bad, which is why I was trying to caveat what I was saying, is always a
Yeah.
kind of, usually a bad piece of punditry. But there is, and I never bother writing notes anymore, but I've read quite shocking, or quite striking, no, shocking, research reports on the decline of literacy in schools, particularly, right?
Sure.
And of course, whatever's being sold now is being written by people, but if people if generally, because of a massive, well, all sorts of reasons, let's not go into those, but if generally people aren't really enthused to pay attention to writing, and maybe even can't write in the way that we would consider to be familiar to writing, they use what one might call multimedia combinations of various pictograms and reference words. I don't know, trying to make this up, but that young people aren't aware of what writing is, or what's demanded in terms of writing, and literacy rates, not literacy rates, a bit. The ability to write is in serious decline. So I don't think there's no kind of, you can't assume everything will carry on forever, just as much as you can't assume everything is on its way out.
I agree.
There is quite a lot of data that says that people's ability to write, or the habit of writing, is pretty much constantly in decline.
Yeah, and with that, there's something, I think it is quite fundamental about your ability to think then, because language is there to, in its essence, it's how you think, isn't it? So if we're losing the ability to put words into combinations together, it would suggest that our ability to think as an active thing rather than a passive thing where you can read fine, but in terms of actually navigating the world, if we don't have that ability to think through constructing whatever is thought through words in whatever form that takes, then that's quite significant. And I think I might have mentioned when I did the shortlisting for the MA this year, I think I had to look at 80 odd applications in the groups, that after about 15, 20 of them, I was going, why the fucking hell are these all the same? Why are they all? And then he just went, okay, the paragraph structure is quite similar. The content might have little differences, but actually they're beginning to look the same. Fucking hell, of course, it's AI, isn't it? You just bang in, write an art application for a master's. I did it, and boom, 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 boom. There it was. On the
So the
face of
question is, what did
it,
you do? What did you do about that?
we just didn't. We didn't interview them.
Good.
But afterwards, I thought either this is a lazy slacker thing, fine. But if it is a kind of default because they haven't got the ability or the knowledge or the skills or the awareness, then that's not my problem. But there is something coming. Must be. If the default is for this purpose, why do I need to write this when I can already get a perfectly comprehensible version out there, which goes completely the opposite to everything that you've talked about tonight. But I
Yeah, yeah,
wonder, how language is going to morph then. You
yeah.
know,
Well, obviously not disappear. Language itself. I mean,
I
writing and language
can't.
are different
Yeah.
things, but yeah, language will always be a resistance to something as much as it is a kind of discipline that bind the whole kind of Foucault thing where all language is all kind of
Yep.
binding us into subjectivities.
Yep.
Thanks, Foucault. It's always way more than that. I mean, the AI thing. If we talk about that, maybe we talk about it another time. I suppose there's so much doom mongering around AI, and most of it seems pretty convincing. But I also feel that, and I don't care how vague this seems, but that it will just fall apart at some point. AI, it can't. I don't think it's sustainable. The technology and its telos, its end purpose,
Mm.
seems to me will at some point fall apart. I don't know how or why, but the idea that everyone just becomes a kind of this is the problem. I'd like to do one of my genuine and it does make me angry, and it does make me right, actually. One of my most frustrating, tedious encounters in popular culture is the idea that the world's going to shit, and if we're going to write about the future, let's have a dystopia. Let's have a series of kind of people all controlled by robots, or everyone running away from zombies. If you're not controlled by a robot or running away from a zombie, Netflix don't want to know what your idea of the future is. Like, it's just complete wallpaper.
Mm.
And I despise it. And it is an intellectual and moral defeat, self defeat, to just portray that image of the future. And it's obviously not true if one takes a bit of time to look at the ways in which ordinary people live day to day, in any case. So yeah, I don't know how or why. Well, I know why. I don't know how, but I don't think AI will quite fulfill its horrific humanity sucking post-humanism cyborg dystopian future. So fuck you, Netflix, and all you lazy dystopian writers. You can all sit in the same room and breathe each other's farts while the rest of us get on with living. Ha.
That'll be nine.
Pretend this is a mic. Pretend this is a mic. There we are.
That'll be 9.99 subscription, please. That's a perfect note to end on.
Lovely. Yeah. Well, it's been a
Good.
pleasure.
I'll go off and watch Netflix. No, I don't actually watch Netflix.
Stay
No.
tuned for next week, everyone, because we'll have a new topic.
Yeah.
We've done writing. We'll have something else. We don't even know what it is yet.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take good care, Graham.
Bye. Bye. Love you. Bye.